Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll call the meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are hoping to have one more member show up here. But Amy, if you would go ahead and call roll.
Ed.
Excuse.
Yes.
Amy, here, Scott.
Here. Well, we do have a quorum. Alex, can you hear me? Question is, can I hear you? I have a question about this item number 3, approve the meeting agenda. I'm not seeing that before.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is something that Joe and Adam and I talked about. We've been talking about it for a while, actually, more in the town council context, but I think it applies to really all of the boards and commissions for the town. And it's just an additional item at the beginning of the meeting to allow the members that are present to take a look and say, hey, actually, this came up and would you mind, can we add, and you would vote on it. Consideration of X on the agenda. And if the majority of the board or council or commission agrees to amending the agenda to add that item, you put it on there and you consider it. Or the other hand, it could go the other way as well. It's a time to say, hey, actually, this agenda item, 2C is we're not going to consider that tonight. We're actually going to move that till the next meeting, or we're not going to consider it at all. And you strike that. And so then that lets anybody that showed up for that particular piece to know that, hey, that's not going to be on the agenda. And we actually, from that point forward, whether you're adding or subtracting or leaving it as is, the majority of the board, commission, or council will confirm at the beginning that, hey, this is the agenda that we're working on for the remainder of the meeting. So that's what that item is. I think as counsel, legal counsel, that it's a good idea, and just in transparency and also just efficiency in running the meetings, and not kind of piecemealing or adding things last minute without having a record that was approved to be on the agenda by the commission. So that's what that is.
Motion and a vote.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we'll put it to the test tonight, because unfortunately the minutes were left out of our packets. So out of the agenda, we will be removing item number 4 for everyone's record and those playing the home game. Is there anything else we need to amend? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda, removing the reading of the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. So item number 4 will be passed. There is no old business for item number 5. New business 6A, consider adopting resolution for an amended tax increment pledge for the Ridgeview West Apartments.
All right, so for this particular item, I'll defer to Kent Ritter, who is the developer on the project, and he's on the Zoom call. And Alex as well, to fill in any, to make any comments from the town's perspective. Of course, I can always chime in as well, but with that, Kent, if you wanted to just give a quick overview of why this item's on the agenda, and then if we have any, they have any questions, or the public, we can take it from there.
Maybe it would be helpful if I jump in first, just to give the the commission kind of here's where we are and why this is what this resolution is. And then Kent, you can fill in the justification for why you're making the ask that you are.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So members, if you'll recall, towards the end of last year, I think it was either November meeting or December meeting of 22, we were hoping or thinking that we might close the Ridgeview project bond issue by 12/31. That didn't happen, obviously, for a variety of reasons. But now we're close. And as Kent will tell you, hoping to break ground here soon this summer. But because of the factors that Kent will describe, the original bond ask that was included in the resolutions that the RDC already adopted last late fall, early winter, are insufficient to cover the project. And so what this resolution would do is amend the previously adopted resolution of the RDC and increase the amount of the bond issue to be not to exceed 2.5 million. We anticipate that the bond issue will probably, if you approve the amendment to the resolution, and also the town council and the Economic Development Commission, they all have to act as well. But you guys are the first step. But we think that the bond issue will come in somewhere in the $2.36 million range. It just depends on interest rates and closing date and whatnot. So that's why we put it as a not to exceed 2.5. So that's the process. This is amending something that you already approved for the project and just amending it to increase the amount to cover what Kent is now going to explain to you, is the need for this increase.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I think that's helpful. And hi, everyone. Good to see you all again. I know it's been a few months. So I think Alex laid it out really nicely. I think if you can remember back, the original approval was for a $2 million developer-backed TIF bond, of which we thought, maybe about 1.7 or so would make it into the project after paying interest and fees, et cetera. I provided a letter to you all, I believe Adam distributed prior to the meeting, where I really outlined, in some bullets, kind of the reasons behind the ask. So I know you've seen that, but to kind of just highlight, really, as we've continued to go through this process, the project is more expensive than we originally anticipated, as inflation has affected construction as well. And interest rates have gone up quite significantly as well since we started. And so what that means is both from a bank loan standpoint and the actual TIF proceeds that make it into the project standpoint have decreased. And more is going to pay interest than actually making it in. So with that, and in working with the town and with Buzz, the town's accountants and others, we've kind of put together, revamped what this could look like to still make this viable. And it really is just that it's moving from about, 2 million to what we think will land in about the 2.36, as Alex said, range. Really, it's a function of how interest rates move between now and then, but not to exceed 2.5. So it's really just the increase from 2 to not to exceed 2.5. Excuse me, 2.5. And I just want to state again that it's a developer-backed bond. So the town isn't taking on, any liability in this fact. It's myself and my company that are bearing the liability to pay back the bond. And the good news is that in talking with the county assessor and confirming with the town's accountant Buzz, that the net assessed value for the property would actually support the increased TIF amount as well, because we actually think that it will assess for higher based on the assessor's formula than we initially anticipated as we were underwriting. So I think that's a positive, and it shows it can support the additional bond size. So that's really just what I wanted to share. And those are the main reasons why, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hey, can I interject something here? Ken?
Yeah, please do.
Can everyone hear? I think another thing to point out is that almost $400,000 of the TIF bonds will come back in the form of utility fees to be able to take the capacity for the new development. So that's another I think significant issue that maybe wasn't really delineated clearly 6 months ago or whenever. And there's also, I can tell you that Mr. Ritter has gotten one of the best underwriting firms for projects such as this to back this deal, and they have no problem, taking on this bond at the, even if it went up to $2.5 million. I don't know if we need to mention their name or not, but we've got a really good financer that's been heavily involved in a lot of these discussions and negotiations that we feel very comfortable dealing with. And as Kent indicated, this is all developer backed, so there's no risk to the town that we'll have to use anything other than the TIF from this project to make the bond payments. So I just thought I'd make those particular points and turn it back over to the commissioners.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Do either of you have any questions for anyone? No, I do have one. So in the initial parts of this agreement, there were specified amounts in excess of payments that would be left for the town. And those increments, whether it was a tax increment, I'm missing the terminology, and I apologize. But you'll recall that the amount that the town was receiving incrementally increased over the years. Does that change? Or is only the bond amount changing? Is everybody familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. We do not anticipate, well, we anticipate that there's going to be excess TIF every year, and that the bond payments won't take up the full 25-year TIF. So again, we've been using the maximum interest rate in our modeling at 8%. We think that interest rate's going to come down. I tried to put the lender on the spot earlier today, but I haven't heard back yet. But we anticipate probably going to be closer in the 7.5 range, maybe, and there should be excess TIF every year. Again, it'll just be, and the other thing is, I think we're conservative on the assessment, so which we want to be at this stage of the game. So there will be excess TIF. Anything we had in the illustrations, those are just illustrations, but we believe that the actual excess TIF will probably exceed those illustrations. And again, until it's built and the assessor comes out and says this is the value we're putting on it, all we can do is our best estimates as to what we think that's going to be. But again, I think we've erred on the conservative side from day one, and the big question would be,
Year.
I'm sorry.
Was this a 20 or a 25 year?
Well, the life of the TIF goes 25 years, and I think in the last illustration, we were at 22 or 23 years. But there's 3 years, probably 3.5 years where it's all capitalized interest, so there is no TIF coming in, so the amortization is closer to a 20-year term, the actual bond amortization period.
Okay, that,
I thought this project, when it was set up, that it was, they asked for 25-year and we gave them a 20. Now, am I wrong?
Are you asking me?
It was
Whoever.
it originally was, as Buzz said, about it was going to be about 23 years because it was 20 from completion. And so you take the time to build and things. So yeah, the ask is, yeah, it was kind of unclear at first, and that left a little ambiguity. And so we decided the decision, or I guess it's an ask as well, is to move it to 25 as well to allow that additional time. And I think that ultimately just puts additional funds into the TIF fund for a couple more years.
okay, so we're not just changing the dollar amount. You are asking us to go from 20 to 25 years as a net.
Well, I guess it would be, it was really maybe 23.5 to 25 as it was originally drafted.
Good. The actual principal and interest amortization would only go about 20 years because of there's going to be a lag before they can build it, have it assessed, and then it goes on the tax roll. So it's about a 3 to 3.5 year lag. And we had about 2 years left at the end of the 25 total life of the TIF that 100% of that money would come back to the RDC, but there will be excess TIF every year coming back to the RDC after it's assessed and on the tax rolls.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. Is the only thing that we're asking, the only thing that is changing in this agreement, the dollar amount of this bond as it's been presented? I don't want a maybe or a yes. I want a yes or a no. Is the only thing changing from our prior agreement to now?
The definition of the length of the bond has changed to be more clear and defined to 25 versus X number of years from completion of the project. To just say the whole thing is going to be 25 years.
Okay, so
From the
it's
start.
length of the term has changed. The dollar amount has changed.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Because I don't see that highlighted in the as a talking point. The only number I see is 20 years, and when I look for general terminology, I don't see anything in here that changes the term. Whether you want to call it 20 to 23 or 23 to 25, I don't see that in here.
Well, Buzz, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's because the RDC's role is to pledge the TIF, the increment, right? Because you guys hold the purse strings for the TIF. I think the term of the bond and the repayment will all be included in the ordinance that the town council issues, and then the EDC's got a part of that as well. So I think that's where the term will come into play.
I don't think the term was ever in the RDC resolution before. It's just the amount and the TIF pledge, but
The length was in our discussion.
it was in our discussion, yeah, and it was 20 years. And we are at a little bit, well, the life of the TIF is by definition 25 years, but
what was the life of the bond? Term of the life of the bond initially when we agreed to this?
Yeah,
Whatever-
initially it was a smaller bond. It was like $1,960,000, I believe. And
Can't hear you, Buzz.
I cut you off
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
barely, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the initial proposal was a little under $2 million. It was, I think, $1,960,000, or I believe. And so that took a little bit less of a term to repay the $1,960,000. I think it was about a 2-year. It was right at 20 years, I believe, before. And now we're at about 23 years in the illustration. Now, if we get a better interest rate, when we get down to I think they're going to set that a week before the closing. We're supposed to have a firm rate, and then we can right size the bond payment schedule. And we've got flexibility there. We could have more annual TIF coming back to the RDC and go a longer period, or we could try to keep the payment period as short as possible. And then there'll be a longer period at the end of the 25-year life to have excess TIF flowing to the RDC. But there will be excess TIF every year once this thing is up and running.
So we never voted on the link. And there's not a request anywhere in this packet changing the link. So that's not our responsibility. The ask of us is to just change the bond amount.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not in the resolution either.
I didn't think it was either. Which, is this the entire resolution or is this just an amendment resolution?
That's the amendment.
This
It's-
amended initial,
It's amended and restated, so it's the entire, this is the resolution.
okay,
It will take the place of what was done before.
that's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Okay,
Nothing about it.
I have no other questions. Do we have any public comment? There being none,
I have a question, something to this magnitude, do you feel that the total council should be here or the commission?
this isn't, oh, the total, this commission?
Yes.
No, because we approved it once before and everybody was on board.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll chime in too, Ed. It's a good question. There's there are 3 main bodies, town bodies that participate in this particular kind of bond issue. This is the same process that we went through on the MVAH, what we called the paper bond, because it's developer backed. We're not going to, putting it out on the market like we did for, water bonds or things like that, that might be rates and things. So since Kent's company is actually, in effect, buying the bonds or responsible for the bonds, they have another buyer, but that's getting in the weeds. The council has their own process and is the ultimate authority of whether to approve the bonds and adopt the bond ordinance to issue it or not. And then the EDC, because of this particular structure under Indiana law, they also play a role in approving, moving forward with that bond. But the council will play a role. And if we'll have first reading of the ordinance this Monday. And so we can talk about it then. And then the plan is to have the second and final reading, if the council approves it on first reading, on Monday, July 3rd. So the council will be able to weigh in completely and fully on this.
Was this like when we made the recommendation versus voting on it?
It's not, this
It's
is
an actual vote.
substantive. This
Okay.
is substantive because like I said, you guys as the RDC, you guys created the economic development area, and therefore you hold the purse strings for the increment, the tax dollars that come in for this type of development in that area. And so you actually have to authorize, committing, in this case, the resolution, 100% and of the TIF revenues to meet the bond repayment. Now, Buzz was explaining that it's anticipated that this building's gonna exceed or bring in more increment than is necessary to meet the debt service. So there'll be extra for the RDC. But you definitely, Amy, the RDC has to agree to commit those tax dollars, the increment, the TIF dollars related to this project to this bond issue. So it's not a recommendation, you're authorizing it.
So do we have a number for this resolution, or is that assigned later? There's not one.
Let's call it resolution. Adam, what's our style for the RDC? Do we do 2023 6-1 or 6A? 2023-6A, I think is probably how we do it.
Yeah, why don't we go with 2023-6A?
So actually, all this commission is doing is
Adopting a resolution.
on this resolution is to use the TIF money to pay not to exceed the $2.5 million bond.
That's right. Correct.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2023-6A as written.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Since we don't have the secretary present, would you be so kind as to sign that and then pass it down?
There is a fee for that. Oddly enough, it's the difference between 2.3 million and 2.5.
Pocket change.
Yes. Okay, moving on, item 6B, consider request for RDC Façade Repair Funds for improvement to 11 and 15 South Main. I guess we'll wait for Adam to get back to his chair.
All right, for the next item on your agenda, Mr. Kevin Crotchfeld, who is an owner of 1115 South Main Street. This is the building with Maduro and Libby's Ice Cream. He is requesting some RDC facade repair funds to make improvements to the windows. And the three estimates, as well as a summary of the request, are outlined in your packet. Certainly, if you have any questions or would like to discuss it, Mr. Crotchfeld is here to provide that information. Thank you.
Mr. Crotchfeld, would you like to address the commission and discuss this plan?
Very carefully.
Great.
If you would state your name and address for the committee.
Kevin Crotchfeld, 7323 Leslie Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana. That's not the building I'm talking about, though. You wanted my home address?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
I'll let my other commission members start with questions.
Okay, and this project here is just replacing the windows, right?
Yeah, I've already replaced the awning and I've replaced the doors and then I've replaced the upper windows. I just haven't replaced the lower windows, the commercial ones to both Maduro and Libby's Ice Cream.
My question is, does replacing windows or reference to a facade remodel?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
we paid for windows at both the other places.
But they did work on the outside too.
There was a pretty significant difference between this and those, however.
Right.
So on those, I think you replaced, I mean, the VFW, it was a major.
Yes.
Oh, that was,
The Fox Garden was windows and a door, right?
well, there's some
And
tuck pointing and other,
I've already taken care of most of that, so I was just really looking to get some help on the window.
okay. So we have three estimates here, one for 11,500, one for 6,000? And one for
one is for-
14,500, is that right?
Yeah, 14,500, 11,500.
And
then
6.
Final one is, no, it's 6,000 per window, so 12,000.
There's one.
So there's two windows basically being replaced.
Okay, I guess I'm not looking at this right. Because I see a total here that for from factory direct for 59,87.
And if I'm correct, that was just for one side, so that would just be for Libby's.
Oh, okay, so we would
Does that make
multiply
sense?
this by
We would
2.
Multiply it by 2, yeah.
Okay.
And the other two are what? Got walls and,
Walls Plus is 11,537.
okay, that's for both of them.
Yep, that's for both of them. And then North Side Glass. It's 8,235 for one, and if I do the second one, they do it for 6,315. That's what, 14,500 basically?
14,550. We don't like doing math.
Can I clarify on the factory direct one? Because I'm still a little confused about that. This is quantity 6.
So they're breaking it down into
So-
3 windows. So right now it's 2 panes, 2 single panes split by a divider. They want to break it down into 3. So I've talked to different glass companies, and some glass companies can do the full thing, like Northside Glass can actually do the full window. And it's
Uh-huh.
like a 700-pound window. Whereas somebody like Factory Direct and Walls Plus are both breaking it down into sections of 3. That's why I would probably prefer to try to do the Northside Glass one, just because I think as far as retail goes, it's a better look.
But just so I understand that, of course, the board understands, for the factory direct one, it says 6. So does that mean that I'm assuming that baked into this number are 2 3-paned.
Yeah, that's my confusion on it is.
So I think
the factory
I think
direct
the-
one.
The
appear-
5,900 would be inclusive of the entire job as I read it.
Okay,
Is that not what you understand?
I thought it was for one, but I know now that I'm reading it, it does say for all, for 6. So that would be both sides.
Okay. So a pretty significant difference.
That is a pretty significant difference, yeah.
Off the cuff, you have it, what would be the justification for doubling the price? Any?
Really, the biggest thing for doubling the price is since it's commercial space and you're always looking in the windows, viewing in the windows, you don't have the dividers, but I guess it's not going to be a huge difference.
So you're
So
talking
I could probably go either way, to be honest with you.
$5,000 or $6,000 to $8,000
Yeah,
to have 2 windows versus 3.
yeah.
And they're already kind of split anyway with
Well,
them.
there's 2.
Right.
Well, right, but
This would be 3 instead of 2.
right, but they're already.
They already are. Are you looking at a picture of it right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only item that I wanted to mention from a planning perspective is I don't recall in our ordinances if we have any specific regulations on reflectivity or tint of the glass. Some jurisdictions do. And if we do have anything about it, it may just be a general statement about minimizing reflectivity. But my point is, from a streetscape and town perspective, we want to make sure that the reflectivity of the mirrored appearance of the glass is minimized. So for example, the one trade-off with the Fox Garden project is they went ahead and put tint on those windows on their own, which ended up voiding out the warranty. And it has kind of a mirrored look to it. And so from my advice is from the town planning perspective is in your narrative, you had requested that there'd be some tint to the window, which is fine. But I would say that an important element of a streetscape is to have retail restaurants that folks can see in as well as out. So I think it would be important to minimize that reflectivity for the particular project. Does that make sense? The mirrored effect, I should say.
And it looks like on this one from Factory Direct that it just has the low E and the argon for the windows, so there wouldn't be any tint to it.
And I don't know what they did. What did they do? Something specific at the
Yeah,
VFW? Because
No, UFW didn't, but Fox Garden did.
because there's no reflectivity on the VFW's windows.
No,
You can see in very well. in
right.
those.
And that's, in my view, the way it should be.
You can see
Now,
very
that being
well. in
said,
the
I honestly
VFW.
understand why it was done at Fox Garden. It makes sense because the sun was coming in and they want to make sure patrons aren't baking in the sun. And so it's understandable. I think with Kevin's building, the other thing to remember is he's got that awning that's above. So I think the need for a reflective tint is probably not as great as at Fox Garden anyway.
I agree.
But I just want to put that out there for consideration.
Okay, and Adam, do you recall on our rules for these funds, was it 50-50?
Yes.
Okay. And the project would be completed prior to, have you seen all of our requirements and rules?
Adam forwarded it all to me.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you're good with everything
I
there?
am good with that. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we're to approve the factory direct for 5987,
Mhm.
we would pay half of that.
That's correct.
And that would allow you to move forward with your project. And
Yes, sir.
any other questions for
Okay,
Mr.
now,
Crutchfield?
What Adam was referring to is reflectivity. If I understood conversation right, this is a clear glass, right?
It'll be clear glass, but once you put the low E and the argon gas in it, it'll cloud it a little bit, but it's still clear, which I think VFW is the same thing.
Okay.
I have no plans on tinting the
Okay.
windows.
Yeah, the low E
Yeah.
and argon is what you have in most homes.
Just to
Yeah.
this door, any big surface like that, we.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're all, I mean, most homes have low E and argon in them
Yes.
now. So it's not gonna look any different than that.
So are you comfortable with the factory direct?
I am, yeah. They've done a lot of windows for me in the past.
I'll
Mhm.
make a motion that we approve $2,993.50 for the windows at 11 South and 15, 11,
Yes.
11. And
It's 11-15. 11's downstairs, 15's upstairs.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck, approving.
Okay. Review of financials. Any discussion or questions?
Well, I had a question last meeting about the display voucher.
That-
Can you help us on that, Adam?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, try not to jump ahead.
Well,
Ed.
I had my agenda covered up.
It's hard to do this. Do we have to approve financials? Alex, we have to approve financials?
we do.
Do we? I'm getting older. Thank you, Alex.
I'll make a motion that we approve the financials as written.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now let's talk about invoices, Ed.
Okay. Adam?
Sure, let me try to clear up any confusion from the last meeting.
We've already paid the.
Okay, yeah, so the redevelopment commission at a prior meeting had allocated. Let's see. $17,549. Since that was made, $8,639 was paid already, which you authorized. And then, so therefore, the remaining funds is $8,910. On this particular invoice that Joe provided, it was a little bit unclear the way the vendor listed this out, in my opinion. But the bottom line is on page 4 of 4, the balance due is $8,957. So there is a difference of about what, $60 or so. And why there's a difference, I don't know.
Difference of $47.
Yeah.
But $47.
So I don't know if there was a little bit of a misunderstanding of what was communicated in the minutes versus what was said, or if something changed on the invoice for the $47. I don't know. That would be, if you wanted to pursue it further, it'd be a question for Joe.
Well, if we committed 17,549 and we paid 8639 by our agreement, we can't go over the 8910.
You could, if you wanted to as a board. You would have to make that decision tonight.
But without knowing why.
I'm not. I mean, I hate to be a stickler over $47, but it's up to you two.
I mean, I'd like to know why it's not the same, but.
Okay.
You know, with our, that's $47.
I don't have it handy now. I don't.
You can make a motion.
I'll make a motion. We table that until we get the resolution of why the difference in money.
You know, second?
Oh, yeah, sorry, second. I was note taking.
Oh, sorry. I
Multitasking.
didn't mean to overtask you.
Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment. Ms. Public, Mr. Public, any public? Non-public? Staff comments.
Yes, I just wanted to put something on the radar screen. As you may be aware, the Fortville Vernon Township Public Library, now known as the Vernon Township Public Library, is looking to relocate and build a new facility. They've narrowed it down to 2 different sites. One site is in McCordsville Town Center, and then the second one is at the Vernon Township office building area near the fire station. The proposal in Fortville would involve expanding that building that's there right now, expanding the parking lot to accommodate the library. There are a ton of fantastic reasons of why that site should be selected over McCordsville. We've expressed a lot of those reasons to the library board, and will continue to do so until they make a decision. Most notably of which the township, the library board and organization would be receiving land for free. So it would allow them to have a bigger library upfront than what they have in what could be in McCordsville. The reason I bring it to your attention tonight is the library board would like to know about what types of financial assistance that each municipality could offer to have the library in their community. And on the side of grants, there are a couple different grants that could be applied for. Fortville has an edge in terms of our experience with some of these grants. But the good news is that for whatever grant that could be chosen, Fortville and McCordsville could access that money equally. So one community, I mean, we have experience in managing it, but one community over the other could access those funds. So there is a potential that they may be seeking redevelopment commission funds as potentially a local match for a grant. And to give you an example, the one grant is through OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs at the state level. It's up to a $500,000 grant, and there's a 10% match for that. And in fact, part of that grant money it's intended for public facilities. So on the horizon, there could be a request for either local match on a grant or direct RDC financial involvement on some infrastructure in that area, whether that be participation in a stormwater pond, any kind of paths or sidewalks, things that infrastructure that's within the TIF. Certainly no decision is being asked for you tonight, but just wanted to make you aware of what's being discussed as a possibility.
So that grant that you're talking about, if we apply for it, McCordsville could use it too.
For that OCRA grant, either entity could apply for it on behalf of the library.
But
So what would happen is that the library chooses a location. And then, I honestly could care less what they do in McCordsville, but for our side is if they end up choosing the Fortville site, which we hope and think it's in the best interest of the library district taxpayers, in addition to us, is that we as the town could apply for the grant on behalf of the library. Other communities have done that. Knightstown, I think, as an example, is one that took advantage of that. So that's how it would be structured in Fortville.
If the library were to choose incorrectly and go to McCordsville, then did I say that?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I agree.
Then it would be on McCordsville to apply for that grant and reach their RDC for support.
Right.
Yeah, we heard that.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? Their RDC doesn't have any money. Oddly enough, this RDC has a
But
lot of
in
money.
terms of, just really quickly and lastly, in terms of stormwater, that's one element that we've been discussing is, as you know, that area over there by the township trustee's office is very flat and drainage is a challenge. And we have multiple property owners that are to the west of there. So basically between their building and say the Fortville town line over the west, there are a variety of different commercial businesses. And And in order to potentially redevelop that area, there could be some big economic drivers to consolidate stormwater and to do it in a one larger pond to make that area more attractive for higher commercial uses in that corridor. So not only could, say, a pond really benefit the township and the library, it could also, we would plan it in such a way that it would benefit commercial redevelopment in that corridor as well, which of course is one of the primary missions of TIF funding.
Does the library any sort of commitment level from us, does that help the decision? Or us just being willing to hear it and knowing that we have money helps their decision, or kind of how do we support their decision? Compared to the decision.
That's a great question. You know, from the town's perspective, I think because everything is so it's still conceptual. It's hard to lock in any numbers one way or the other in terms of a commitment. My advice is that simply telling the library board that the RDC is well funded and has uncommitted funds that could, a portion of which could be utilized towards the project or projects in the vicinity. I think it, unless told otherwise, should be a good amount of comfort at this point.
Alex, is there a message we can deliver that committing without non-committing to offer support?
Absolutely. I think along the lines of what Adam just said, that, you know, look, the RDC is interested, you know, by what they've heard so far on this project, and, you know, is willing to consider making a formal pledge to help the project go forward. And, you know, I think that lets them know, and will let their lawyer know that, hey, we're open to this. It of course they need to come and make a specific ask and need to consider the project. But I think that's a perfectly appropriate step for the RDC to take.
Is that something we would put in writing? If we
Sure.
all agree that we're
Yeah.
willing to do that?
Yeah, and it could be a formal letter, it could be an email from you, or, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to draft that because I'll say the wrong thing. Is that something you and Adam can put together for us?
Adam and I can ghostwrite something for you, and you can review it and make sure it looks right. And yeah,
So if you're ghostwriting, I can take credit for it afterwards?
That's right.
100%. That's what you pay me for.
Yeah, we
Take
do have
credit for the
a,
good stuff and then blame me for the bad stuff. That's
That's
the
right.
deal.
I'm good with that.
Well,
That's the deal.
is on Monday. Joe and I have a meeting with the library and their board that they had requested to talk about potential grants and a financial assistance package and concept. We will relay to them what.
Should we all show up?
No, not at this point.
No, do not.
As the RDC committed to looking into it and a willingness to provide some level of funding. That's up for debate as to how much, and we can follow up with a letter of commitment or support.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it's
Well, it's good for the local businesses too. I mean, like the library does there's so many services that it is providing for our. community.
absolutely. I
If I
mean,
could just
you know,
read.
it's an institution that's been in town for over 100 years, and you know, frankly, I'm disappointed that we even have to have this discussion of trying to keep the library in town. I think that should be a given. But that being said, is like I said, if you're looking from a library board perspective, the fact that you get free land and you can have a larger facility right off the bat that can make it a lot more appealing, whether you're a McCordsville resident or Fortville or county.
What's the time frame that would be walkable? Town.
Well, that's a great question. I would say that as soon as the Broadway project is done, it will be walkable. Because you'll be able to cross that, the creek over Old Garden Street, which is, there's already a pedestrian bridge there. You can pick up the path along Three Rivers and then come
Yeah, go
down
around.
Vitality. So, that's another nice perk of this project is if they were to do it, they'd have that pedestrian accessibility available right then and there. Wouldn't have to wait a decade as they would elsewhere. So,
I would commit that I will even learn to read English.
I already know.
Is that it for staff comments,
that's
sir?
it for me. I just want to bring that on the horizon.
Board comments?
I don't know.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion. 7:46.
Oh, I'll second.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Did you say aye? All right, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.